Okay, we've got a good one for you guys today. So I think that we're spending all of our attention on our little guy back there, and we're not really spending that much time or paying that much attention to our older kids, and it's got me worried.
Yes, but before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe down below. We are almost at 1,000 subscribers. Okay, I'm gonna let you go.
So I noticed this morning that our little guy, especially since he turned 2, I feel like he's turbo baby man. From the morning he gets up, he hits the floor and he starts exploring, and he goes from one thing to another, and he's always trying, somehow he always finds things that are breakable, that are expensive, and he just wants to throw them in the air. He wants to probe them. He wants to get them out. He throws a fit if you try to take it away from him. And so Z and I, on the weekends, we're just chasing him. We're tag teaming him all the time. And if he's not in your arm, if he's on the ground, then he's going to be running to get into something, and he spends about 3 seconds at one thing, and then he's running to get another thing, and he just loves it when he feels like he's outrunning you. And and while we're doing all this, I feel like our older kids, our 7-year-old and our 8-year-old, who are about to be 8 and 9, they're into their tablets, they're into their Roblox, they're doing that stuff, and I feel like they just, we park them on that because it's easy for us, and we go chase our 2-year-old around. And I was telling C this morning, like, I feel like we're neglecting our older kids, and I'm worried about it.
And then my question to you was, let's say he didn't exist, he wasn't born as of yet. What would you do with this additional time, or this time where you weren't distracted or occupied with the kiddos?
Well, I started to say that I would come up with creative educational activities to do with the older kids, but in actuality, I would probably stick them on their tablets while I went and edited photos or videos, or looked on the internet for
And
something.
that is my point. He is 2, right? He is at a point in development where he wants to explore the world. He wants to go bang, he wants to throw, which he does, his spoon and his fork, and he wants to shut a door and like lock you out. And it is our job as parents to allow him to explore the world in a safe way, also at the same time setting our boundaries and what is appropriate with them. I think it's what we do, right? And so at this age, I was prepared. I read about it. He's going to be in his toes, right? He's going to be running up the stairs. He's going to be throwing things. And so I've been doing such things as when he throws his bottle or the fork, I will take him by the hand, or I lift him up together. We go and pick it up. Even if he's trying to kick and pull, nope, we're going to take the time. You're going to come with me. And he just woke up. We're going to put it in the garbage, right? And I think it's just what you expect at this age. And I was asking Charles, did our older ones not go through this? And for those of you that are new, my older 2 children are my quote unquote bonus babies, meaning that I didn't birth them. They're not my biological children. And when I met them, they were 2 and 3 at that age. And I felt like they needed a lot more attention. But at 8 and 7, or they're almost about to be 9 and 8, I don't think they require that much attention. And Charles is a really attentive dad. During the weeks, he takes the older kiddos to karate. He will swim with the kiddos. On the weekend, he takes them to the park. He does so much. And so I was like, when he's telling me, like, I don't think we have, I think our youngest, takes away time from our older kiddos. I'm like, well, what more? And I mean, if he had a plausible answer, I'd be okay with it. But I was like, don't blame our youngest, our little baby, on the lack of time. There is a time if you want to create the time. it's there. Just do you feel like he's just taking a lot of your own personal time away? Is that what it is more so? And it's okay if you feel that way.
No, I feel like the amount of attention that he requires in the last couple of months has just really stepped up. To where it pretty much involves you and me constantly,
Mm-hmm.
on the weekends, and also I think I'm hypersensitive to it because of the fact that, like, with our older two kids, you're not the biological mom,
Yeah.
and so I feel like, whereas baby man is both of our biological child,
Yeah.
and so I guess I'm a little hypersensitive because I feel like, oh, I don't want the older kids to feel like they're different in some way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and I know that the younger kid is always going to have to get more attention,
Yeah.
at least while he's in, 2, 3,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
phase. But how do we make sure that we're not, making the older kids feel like they're outsiders?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer because I do understand them not having their biological mom. The natural tendency is like, does he, our youngest, get more attention because he has both his biological parents present? And it really is to age, and sometimes I'm aware of that. So sometimes I'll sit in the room late at night with our daughter, who's now 7, because sometimes I feel like she's also going through a transition,
She
right?
is definitely.
And it's just hit her early, right, as far as learning about her own biological mom, her feelings towards that. She's kind of touching into makeup and how she wears her clothes, and she's hitting that exploratory age that I think a lot of young girls reach.
And, like, on that same point, I think that her recent changes are part of what's making me focused on this subject, because, like, part of me wonders, are her changes partially fueled by feeling like an outsider in our family, or by us not giving enough attention because we're allocating so much attention to baby man. You know, are her anxieties and are her frequent changes somewhat fueled by that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, he's been present for the past 2 years. I don't know if it's triggered by that. I think, you know, for both of the children, our older children, we should do things as far as making them feel special on their own. For
Right.
example, I love this morning, Charles was helping our oldest put together his birthday flyer. I could tell he felt really special about, like, because he's really into, if you guys have heard of, like, FNAF.
Five Nights at Freddy's,
Five
the,
Nights
the
at
video game.
Correct. And I could just tell he felt really special, spending time with you, putting together his flyer. But just little things. And I think as far as our daughter, I try to talk to her about clothes. I planned for her birthday, maybe she loves her nails. She was just talking to her friend about getting her nails done, but probably having a girl time. So I think it's important that we're intentional on the time or that we spend with the children, but we also have to realize it's not always fair in every instance.
Yeah.
And I also think that them having a younger brother allows them to get a certain maturity and growth. Because even with our daughter, when our youngest was first born, she wasn't interested.
Yeah.
He couldn't play, he couldn't engage. He was just a little goo goo gaga wobbling his head. And I don't think she knew what to do as far as or how to engage. But now she loves him. She will guide him, play with him, do all the things. So I think it helped to mature her a little bit, to help care about someone else. Now, don't get me wrong, she still loves herself. But she's learned sometimes the attention is not all about her. And I think that's something important that I'm trying to develop with her, because I think sometimes she can be, well, what about me? How
Oh,
do I
yeah.
get this? How do I? And it's just a phase. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's just something that I think we have to direct. And so I want her to feel loved and to feel as if, she is special, but at the same time, everything is not always about her, right? It's just something that we have to teach her. But I don't think, going back to what we're saying, I don't think that we can put the blame on our little one for lack of attention. I think the time for the attention is there. And we also are blessed or privileged to have the help of an au pair live-in nanny.
Mm-hmm.
So that really does help. And she loves our youngest. She loves all our kiddos, but she and the youngest one has a special bond. She's always willing to help, where she can. And so I feel like that allows us, to have the time, if we choose, to be intentional about activities or moments with the older kiddos.
I think I just need to make sure that I'm taking the time, that I'm making the effort with the older kids, because I feel maybe what I was saying was that I feel like I'm not doing as good of a job as I could. Maybe that's what I was saying.
Okay. I also want to make sure, I guess maybe when you kind of put the statement in, I just want to make sure you didn't resent our youngest one.
Well, of course, I could never resent it.
I know, but how it came across this morning when you were like, he's the cause of me, you didn't say it this way, but this is how I took it, right? I know this is not what Charles said verbatim, but how I took it. And so I just want to make sure you weren't resenting our youngest, because I'm like, he's 2, he just turned 2, right? So he's just learning. I don't feel like our oldest kiddos were any different at that age.
No, but when they were that age, it was only just them.
But yeah, so it was even harder, right? Because they both wanted that attention. It wasn't just them, it was 2 of them.
Yeah, but they were both getting the attention.
But you had to give each one of them attention, right? Wouldn't that be harder?
But neither one was getting more attention.
No, but they were both required more. So if now they require less attention at 8 and 7, I don't see how it's more difficult to balance that. Wouldn't it be harder to have like younger kiddos? It's like having twins.
But my question was not so much, do they require less attention at 8 and 7 or getting ready to be 8 and 9? But do we take advantage of the fact that they can be given less attention to give them less attention because we spend so much time with this guy?
What? I don't understand. Do we take
because they can sit down on their tablets for hours and like they don't kill themselves or other people.
And so, rephrase the question because it didn't make sense to me.
So, are we taking advantage of the fact that they can be left alone to leave them alone?
And then, I don't think so, because hence my initial question to you: what would you do differently, as far as time-wise or activity-wise, if our little one did not exist or was yet to be born?
I'd probably take time for myself.
And that was it. So I'm saying it's okay.
Yeah, so
He's calling out. I was like, it's okay.
I'm a hypocrite.
Okay, as long as we got there. I didn't want to come off attacking Charles, because I wanted him to be real to his feelings. Because sometimes I know I can come off a little, I can make accusations or be a little aggressive. I'm aware of that. Listen, growth, I'm aware. But I also wanted him to be real in how he truly felt, if he felt like our little one was taking away personal time. And it's okay, because I feel some days I feel overwhelmed, and I feel like, I wish I had a little bit more silence. And like I said, our older kiddos, they have friends now. Sometimes their friends occupy them. They love to do their tablet. And we're not all about putting our kids on the tablet, so don't get that confused. But they like to do their tablet or the TV, and they can sit in one place. Once he's up, except for nap time, he's on the go, like Charles said. So sometimes there is no time, even to use the bathroom, because you gotta be real quick, right? Because he's moving. He's turning on hot water. He's trying to put his hand in the toilet. He's trying to pull down something off the countertop. He's throwing something at glass, right? It's just that period, that he's going through, that stage that he's going through. And so it's a lot of attention for him, right? And we love him, but I can understand where Charles is coming from, where, sometimes you just want to like sit for a second, right?
So our question was, are we allocating too much time to our young one at the expense of our older kids? And we want to know from you guys, have you had younger kids that are substantially different in age from your older kids? And
Yeah, at
if
least a
so,
5 year age gap.
yeah, did you and how did you handle it? Did you ever see or did you ever think about there being an issue with how much time you're spending with your little ones versus your big ones? And how did that work out for you?
And remember, once again, like and subscribe down below. We'll talk to you guys later.